Well, we came to live in Oriworth in 1961. And there's quite a story about it, really. We were married in 1960 and we wanted to live in Oriworth because Brian was working in Lichfield at the time and our parents were in Burton, so Oriworth was great. And all I really wanted was a little thatched cottage, and there was lovely thatched cottages in Oriworth. So we went to look at this one for sale, and it was really a lot of money, and the deposit was too much for Brian and I to afford. So he said to me, why don't we try and find a bit of land, then we can build a house, and then after a few years we'll sell the house and then we'll have the money for this deposit for this thatched cottage. So every weekend, more or less, we used to come in our little Morris Minor, which had got a soft top, and drive round Oriworth and see what there was. We used to bring a flask of coffee and some biscuits, didn't we? And one day we just happened to stop outside here, which is our front garden now, and was a field then, and it's just opposite Post Office Road. And I said to Brian, we're just sitting having a coffee, weren't we? And I said to Brian, could we build in? He said, yeah, lovely, yeah. So he went next door, which is...
Knocked on the door, it was a Mrs Bradford.
Mrs Bradford, One Church Road, which was the old coal wharf years ago to the canal. And she said the man who owned it was a farmer called Mr Jack Swinfield. So she told us where he lived, and Jack Swinfield lived opposite...
well, he lived next to Coates's, next to
Coates's Butchers, opposite the William IV Road. That's where Jack was. So off Brian went and to see him. And he said, oh yes, he didn't mind selling it, you know, it was only a little bit of his field at the back. So he brought in Wintertons, and Wintertons were going to be the agents, and a Mr Freddie Mallet came with you, didn't he? Yeah. And Freddie Mallet and Brian looked at the piece of land, and Freddie Mallet said, why don't you have further back and then you'll be all along by the canal? And Brian said, oh, that's no good, we haven't got enough money to buy all that. And he said, oh, I bet Jack would let you have it for the same money. And Jack did. And so, well, that was really the start of it. Brian had then got to find a builder and do some plans, and we lived in a caravan in the front garden then, didn't we? So I think I'll let Brian tell you about the building.
We agreed to buy the land subject to getting planning approval. So that was where I had to start. And at the time I was working in Lichfield, as Audrey said, but I was studying also to become an architect, because I wasn't an architect at
we were just two bits of kids at the time, I mean.
And so I got that to do. I had a full-time job at work. Evenings were taken up with studying and drawing. And anyway, now I've got to set about designing a house, getting planning permission. So that's what I did. I set
and getting a builder as well.
So I set about, and it was somewhere, where were we? January in 1961 that I made the outline planning application. And we'd agreed to buy it subject to getting the permission, which we did get. So that was it. Freddie Mallet said, right, okay, here we go. So we agreed to buy the land, and that was it. Put in the hands of the solicitors to get cracking with that. So I then started designing the house proper to get full planning permission and to sort the builder's building arrangements out and all the rest of it. Well, during all that time, the solicitors came up with a problem. And the problem was
I forgot
that at the front of the house here, it used to be what was called a pinfold. It was a common bit of land that was effectively owned by the village.
Forgot that.
And any stray cattle, sheep, anything was actually put onto the pinfold until the farmer who owned that came and claimed it and took it away. Well, at that moment in time, it was, we wanted to buy it. We wanted it in our bit of land, otherwise we wouldn't have been able to access the land without a helicopter.
But it hadn't been used for years and years and years.
Well,
and,
it hadn't been used to put cattle on.
Jack
Swinfield and Tom Mellor, who farmed the land here at the time, they had maintained that land and used the land. So at the end of the day, the solicitor came back and said, we've sorted it all out. It's now part of your deeds.
Legally it was all
legally,
right.
You're all right, it's yours. So off we went again then, and so I could get all the drawings finished, and then is when I contacted Arthur Ward, the builder in Main Street, to see if he was prepared to, whether he could.
50 Main Street.
Number 50, Adderley was the name of the property. And Jack said, well, yes, he'd do a price for me, so I got a tender from him in due course, and it all worked out all right.
And
now, the only thing was, I was going to be the contractor, effectively.
Yeah.
Now, what that means is that Arthur wasn't going to be the contractor. He was going to be a subcontractor to me and just do the brickwork and put the roof structure up. I was going to get other people to come and do windows, doors, joinery, flooring, heating, lighting, plumbing, all that sort of stuff, separately to Arthur doing that. But anyway, so just to add to the bit that I got to do in the meantime. Well, anyway, we sorted all that out, and we actually moved into the caravan, which your mum bought.
And rented out to us in the front garden. We lived in the front garden for a bit.
Because we had to move out of the cottage that we lived in at Wall when we first got married. We had to come out of there, so we moved into the caravan, and I set my drawing board up in the caravan on the table.
There were happy times. We had lovely times.
And that was it. Well, we started building on the 19th of May 1962. We actually started, and the house became secure, if you like, secure enough to think about moving in on the 29th of October in 1963. But we actually moved in just, well, November, December time. We sort of were moving in just before that Christmas.
So we're in the caravan for quite a while, weren't we?
Well, all of 1964 we spent decorating. My father came over, my brother came over. You did the floor in the hall there. There's a photograph somewhere of Audrey doing the floor.
All the slates down.
And so we finished the house effectively during 1964. And Miles was born in the January 1965.
My son.
On the 28th of January. So that was that period of time, and that's where we got to by that time. Well, as I say, Tom and Connie moved into the house next door, number 1 Church Road.
Which used to be the old coal wolf, as I said before.
They moved into there in 1968, October 1968, which is now where Tom and Connie's son and daughter-in-law live.
Yeah.
And as Audrey's, I think, already
we didn't mention that Arthur Ward, his daughter, was Diane, who was until the other day at the post office. Yes, I forgot to say that.
Now, the other things I ought to just mention are that working for Arthur at that time, I've got one or two names written down. One was Len Lathbury. Well, he was the bricklayer. He was the chief bricklayer on the site.
Good bricklayer.
And he was absolutely brilliant, was Len. Lovely man, and he did all of the work. Excellent it is. And his wife Pat is still living in the village, as is his son Stuart, who is now also a builder. Well, 2 other names I've got that I can recall are Alex Kent, who worked on the house for Arthur, and Sid Ward, not a relative to Arthur's, and the other one was Malcolm Harcombe.
Yes, he did the joinery. Still lives in the village. Yeah, Malcolm still lives in the village with Pam.
So that, I mean, that's more or less the story of the house.
Before we go ahead, just, you're doing a great job. Can you just avoid slapping your hand on your leg?
Sorry.
It's all right.
Thank you.
Noticed that.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's no big deal at all.
You don't realise, do you?
Yeah, you do. I mean, we all tend to do things. I mean, Paul always going on a leave for it, but that's great. That was lovely. That was lovely.
What's your next one, Jean, just a matter of interest?
I remember that story because you told us that story at WI.
Part of it, with the boat, with the boat story, It is true, that is, I didn't probably tell you, are you still recording?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm just letting it all go.
What was your involvement with the Civic Society? I've got both here, but you...
And Brian, it'll be,
yes. When was it formed? Who formed it? And what sort of things did you do? Did they do?
Right. Well, I've had to really search in my memory for this because I've got no actual physical records. I think I must have passed all my written records.
You passed all your postcards on to the Civic Society. You've got a lot of old postcards, but we just gave them when you finished, didn't we?
But from what I can recall, it was formed in 1969.
The first chairman was Geoffrey.
Geoffrey Burns Mace was the very first chairman. And the other people that I can remember that were around at that time, there must be others, probably quite a lot of others. It was Glynis Burns Mace and his wife, and Geoffrey, Connie Mullin, Jan Watson, Margaret Stanhope and Michael, Edgar Skelding, Sid Chaplin and Mo and Ken Jackson, I recall. But I can't recall any other names at the
No,
moment.
there probably were some more, but you know, you have a job to remember, don't you?
But I mean, yeah, the purpose.
I
mean, the purpose of it, really, when it was formed, as far as I can recall, is that it was felt by a number of people that it could do with something else in this village, apart from the parish council, who obviously were doing their job as they were required to do. But it needed somebody who could do something a bit different and be a bit more maybe controversial with things. So that's why I think it was set up at that time.
I don't remember why it was actually formed, to be perfectly honest, but one of the very first things you did was when you did the lovely picnic site by the mill stream.
Well, that was in 1970 that it was decided that as a project the Civic Society would set about actually doing something there that could be like a legacy to the Civic Society forever, which it obviously still is, and is wonderful.
And Ken Jackson owned that land, didn't he? And he was on the Civic Society at the time, and because they had to give him some money, he had to be given some money, he let them buy it just legally, for £1, didn't he?
Legally, he wasn't allowed to just
he couldn't just give it.
Say it's yours. He had to sell it.
So he let them have it for £1.
And again, we've got some wonderful photographs of the actual doing of it, which
and I mean, it's still as nice today. It's one of the lovely things that everybody talks about in the village, isn't it?
I was the chairman of it just for a very short period of time.
Early
after
on.
It was formed, yeah. And it's good to see that it's still going.
Yes, it is.
Going strong.
Brilliant. It is. It's a lovely place to go and just sit and think about things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us about your involvement in producing the village hall plans and how the building work came about.
Right.
The village hall.
Village hall. Well, that was during the chairmanship of Sid Evans, who was a very high up person at the hospital board in Burton at the time. He got quite a high position there, and he was that sort of person that could get things done. And whilst he was chairman, the committee decided that they wanted to change things. They needed to change things. It needed to be given a facelift and be able to do other things. Now, they had an attempt previously in 1962, well, a thought about doing it, which I've got a drawing of, which you can have a look at. But that was abandoned. But what that scheme required was actually to acquire a piece of land and give back a piece of land at the rear of the existing hall so that it could be squared off, and they thought make a bit of sense at that time. Well, it never happened.
No, they didn't do it, did they?
So, as I say, it raised its head again 75, 76, and it was desired to carry on and get cracking and do something properly that time. Well, Sid Evans had actually organised loans and a lot of finance, and a lot was raised locally.
We raised ever such a lot. That's on that cutting that we've got a cutting of it, haven't we, that was in the paper.
A press cutting which
I forgot now much, but it does say it on there.
Well, at the end of the day, I was approached by Sid to would I do the drawings, would I be the architect for the scheme? So I said, of course I would, you know, I'd love to do. So I did. And obviously I didn't want anything for it, I wanted to just do it, so I did. So there was quite a bit of work, but between us we sorted it all out, and I think pretty well what you see at the moment now.
I'm going to say it's more or less the same, you know.
I don't think it's changed
it obviously
very much
wants
since
upgrading
then.
again now, all those years later.
What I can't remember is actually who the builder was that did the work.
No.
But we think that Cyril Povey has probably got a record of that somewhere that could be looked into. And the other thing that happened, of course, during that alterations to the village hall was the moving of the stage, which was part of the scheme.
And the Dramatic Society did that, didn't we?
Did it themselves.
We did it ourselves, yeah.
They did the work, and
I remember
if I recall, it was on a Sunday morning we did it, and Don Griffin helped you, yes, I remember Don. And I can remember doing it. I don't think we've got any photos of it, but we'll carry on looking. And we actually did it by turning it round. We had to turn it right round so that it fitted the other end in the direction that we wanted it to be. And we did it by using car jacks, actually. We put a car jack under each corner. And I'd measured it, obviously, being an architect.
And it would
I
just
measured
go
the
round.
diagonal dimension of this.
Yeah, it would just.
And it would just go round with about an inch to spare on each of the radiators either side.
And the reason we did put it the other end was because where it was you used to take it down and put it up, didn't you? And there weren't any backstage facilities or anything like that. Well, when we moved it to the other end, and because Brian made it that you could look down, you know, he made all that upstairs, it made it a lot better, not just for the Drama Society, but for other things as well. And also that piece that you cut off the front, they said you could put it on the front of the stage. I don't know what happens now really with it, you know, to make it a bigger stage or a smaller stage if people wanted more room in the actual hall for an event like a dance or anything.
But the problem where it was originally, there were passageways down either side of it, and at the interval of a play, for instance, the audience got up and went through that passageway at the side of the stage to get to the kitchen. Well, I mean, that's where the cast wanted to be and
change and all that.
They had to nip upstairs and get out of the way while the audience were there. And then
made it so much better when it was round the other way.
Yeah.
But of course the entrance was altered and all that. But it seemed to work very well, and it has worked very well until recent, hasn't it?
Can I ask where was the main entrance? Was that at the front or was that
right
at the back?
At the very front. And just as you came in at the very front, there were toilets, like a cloakroom area either side of the main entrance doors there.
Can I ask a question as well? Who built the current dressing room? Was that part of
That was
the...
part of the scheme.
Of that,
yes.
All to do with that.
Could you give me a sentence saying that, you know, the dressing room currently was part of the...
Yes.
If you just say that for me.
And in fact, that's
the dressing rooms, yes, the dressing rooms were all done as part of the scheme,
It was
weren't
done as
they?
part of the scheme.
And that
there was
and the
actually
backstage area was all part of it, and all that where you go up the top and look down, and you know you could drop things down, can't you now, and all that. You can fly, as he said.
But there was actually I did a drawing before the ones I've just been showing you, which I've thought about since now. My original scheme was actually where the dressing room is at the side of the stage there. The intention was that there should be a door out of the back of it, as it were, that went down what would have been the side of the village hall itself, with an extension from the village hall proper, the main hall, and it went out on the side, and it would have gone right the way down and come out again where the kitchen area is. But
what was
for
the
some
purpose
reason,
of that then?
Well, to widen the village hall itself was one of the reasons, like to form a sort of gallery area at the side, and also to give a link to get from the dressing rooms inside without having to go outside to get back to the kitchen area.
Yes, that's right.
That was the intention, but that bit didn't happen.
No.
Did you actually have drops down then for the stage or not?
Before it moved, no. But yes, when we'd done it, yes, that was what was
at the
available
back
to
of the
do.
stage, where you got the stage now at the back of the room.
Yeah.
You've got drops there coming down, or not?
With the new stage, yes. Yeah, there is
They're the roll cloths, aren't
there's
they?
a high level
The roll
walkway.
cloths,
Yeah, they had roll cloths.
But before you
Yeah.
wouldn't have had that.
No, before you had to have things that you brought on and stuff.
It made ever such a difference, not just for the drama, but for other things as well, didn't it?
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
extensions are still there now.
Yes.
Yes,
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
well exactly
Yeah,
as they
yeah.
were then.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And the talk now, if ever the village hall gets that far, they want to put that piece that you're on about, going to the kitchen at the back.
Yeah.
They want to use that as a chair area, wasn't it originally? I think on one of
That's
the
the
plans we've got.
aspirational thing, but that's
Yeah.
not that for a while
Yeah.
yet.
Which at the moment it's just for
It's
stepping
just-
stones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
An outside
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Next, tell me about how and why you moved the stage. Oh, we've done that, haven't we? Yeah. Are you going to do about the memories being involved in the Dramatic Society, or do you want to do that
Do some
with
now.
Maggie?
Do
some
whatever.
now.
Do what you can.
When
what
did
you
you
want to do now.
join, and what productions were you in?
We were in a lot of societies when we first came into the village, as you are, aren't you, when you're younger? As I say, Brian the Civic, and also the badminton club. We were in the badminton club, weren't we?
Yes.
Until that moved.
That was a little
Because
story.
that's a little story, because the floor, the dancers wanted the floor a bit slippier, and the badminton club wanted the floor a bit rougher. So there was a bit of a clash, nothing nasty, but in the end the badminton club moved, and we went to Barton under Needwood. About 1963 we moved.
I think it moved.
And we moved to Barton, and it was called
BXA.
Barton X Oriwas Badminton Society. And of course the other thing I was heavily involved with was the Drama Society. I joined in 1965. I can't believe I joined in 65 when I just had Miles, but anyway I did. And I was in, my first production was Paul's Paradise. And it was a very funny farce, and the people that were heavily involved at that time were Dr. Jimmy Platt. He was the local doctor, and he used to feature heavily in the productions, and Jan Watson, and Margaret Hunt was in it, and quite a few of the, Pat Curran, of course, Pat Curran, yeah. And well, I was very heavily involved in the drama for a long time, and I was the secretary, and like you are, on the committee and everything, and appeared in as many productions as I could possibly be in. And I used to love being in the drama, still involved in drama now, but not quite the same. And then I think I finished with more or less not packed up with Oriwas, because I was in Lichfield then. I went and did a lot more, and I think my last thing with Oriwas was about 1982. But the wonderful thing we did in Oriwas was when the village hall was being altered, as Brian has been telling you about. We couldn't be in the village hall for a while, so we did No Time for Fig Leaves. I forget the date, but I have got it down. And then we had to be out of the village hall because they were going to alter it. So we did the most wonderful production called A Man for All Seasons in the Church. Well, it was really a wonderful, you know, everybody said how fabulous it was, and of course heavily involved who was John Colston, the local vicar. And then the next one we did was the music hall, and we did that in the old British Legion down Wellfield Road. And then we went back in the village hall that had all been recently done, and we put on Toad of Toad Hall, so that would be the first thing we put on the new stage. I'd also like to mention I was heavily involved with Shakespeare in the Park at Witchner. The first production we put on there was in 1983, and it was A Midsummer Night's Dream. And the lady who owned Witchner Hall, Kim her name was, she was an American lady, wanted to do the Shakespeare in the Park in the grounds because it was beautiful with this big oak tree and all that. So she got in touch with John Colston, because she knew he was involved with the drama, and myself and a lot of other people around and about. And it was really the very first community theatre that we'd had in the area. It wasn't just Oriwas Dramatic Society or another dramatic society. We involved all sorts of different people. It was a wonderful, you know, communal effort. And the money that we raised from that in 1983, this Midsummer Night's Dream, went to Witchner and Oriwas churches. And I mean, it's still going today, Shakespeare in the Park. We only did it 3 times, the 3 years we did at Witchner, because the lady then moved and sold the hall, so now it's at Maple Hayes, and it's still going today. But lovely memories of the Dramatic Society in Oriwas and the Shakespeare in the Park.
And Shakespeare in the Park still support us with the Arts Festival.
Yes, they do,
Every time
yes.
they give us funding.
Yes, they've given you money, haven't they?
Yes,
yeah, they've
every
given
time.
money for the Arts Festival, yeah.
Brilliant. Did you want to talk about how the village changed since you've lived here, like building shops and activities?
Well, it has changed a lot since we obviously came here in '61. I mean, day by day, you don't notice, do you? But when you look back over the years, you realise, and we've been talking about that, and you were talking about the Hart's Garage, weren't you?
Yes, I think it was mentioned in the previous book, actually.
Yeah,
what I was
Peter's
thinking.
book, yeah.
But I said to you, was it last night or this morning, whenever, I remember sort of coming home from work in my car from Lichfield and dropping it off at Hart's Garage of a tea time as I arrived home. Coming home, having my tea, having my evening, going to bed, getting up in the morning, wondering where my car was, and suddenly remembering, oh, I've left it at Hart's overnight. Picking it up from Hart's because they'd either serviced it or repaired it for me, which they
overnight,
did
that's
overnight.
what they used to do,
Which
yes.
is a wonderful,
He didn't like to
wonderful
start
service.
working till about 2
No,
o'clock in the
that's
morning, did he,
right.
apparently?
No.
Lovely,
It
yeah.
was wonderful, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a service that was.
Yeah.
The main thing I think really was, but it's the same with everything, the traffic obviously is, you know, horrendous
Changed a lot,
now
hasn't
compared to what it was. Shopping wise, as people of my age will know, you had to go to the shops nearly every day because you didn't have big freezers and you didn't have big supermarkets where you went and, you know, got your shopping once a week and bought this enormous amount of food and stored it. You went every day more or less, didn't you? And that's very, very different. Also, you could more or less get anything in the village at that time. There was hardware shops and there was the lady who sold all the wools and things, and all the little shops you could get anything more or less from, couldn't you,
Cowling's
Brian?
down at the other end there.
Carling's
the
later
hardware
on. There was the hardware shop near where the co-op is
Harvey's.
now. Harvey's. They used to sell the tickets for the Drama Society.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, the WI used to do the teas at the Drama Society, by the way, and we always used to have a cushion. I forgot that little bit. I should have put that in with the drama.
The
But
news
in the
agents, I mean, we were talking about this, we couldn't sort of think where the news agents actually was before it was at the,
No,
where
we
now the co-op is taken over it. I've spoken to Rob Ball. I think he needs to do a little bit more investigation maybe on this one to sort of
It's up
fit
up
it
the
in a
road
little
opposite
bit.
Dickinson's.
That, yes.
The one, the
I don't know
house,
when it moved
yes.
to there.
But
or-
when we
but
moved in the
that's-
caravan,
Yes, when we were in the caravan while we were building the house here.
the first morning
The
we
very
woke
first
up.
Sunday morning it was. We woke up and we wondered what on earth this bumping and thumping was that was right next to us where we were. And anyway, we looked out, went to investigate, and there was people coming and going into the shed,
Next
which
door.
was next door.
And it was the Sunday newspapers they were
getting the Sunday
selling.
newspapers apparently.
They used to sell the newspapers there on a Sunday. We don't know why. All I can think is Monday to Friday, whatever, you know, place used to sell it, they're probably shut then.
Yeah.
You know, on a Saturday perhaps, and then the Sunday the shop wouldn't be open that normally would sell the daily papers. So that's all we can think of really. Somebody said it was the post office that used to sell them, but we don't really remember,
No.
do we?
No.
I can remember Robert's dad coming from Lichfield
Yes.
into Orrewis to sell the newspapers at the shop up the road.
Right.
And somebody said they used to
Right.
sell them in the Crown car park. I don't know. I think that needs a lot more investigation. But
Just to be sure.
next door, definitely, when we were in the caravan
doing
in
Sunday
60,
papers.
in 61, 62, whatever,
yeah.
they were definitely selling the Sunday newspapers next door, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But in the
Other
village, I mean, I
changes.
think, you know, other people would be able to tell you probably, you know, remember more what's happened in the village. It's like everywhere, really, as I say, the traffic, the little shops and...
What was there was a little shop down here, just this side of the post office as
Oh
well.
yes, Iris and Jim
Iris
Paget
and Jim
was
Paget.
this. I used to go down there most days.
Dorothy Yardley. She
Yes,
sold-
before her it
Yeah.
was. Iris
Yeah.
and Jim Paget
Yeah,
it was.
yeah.
That would be in the 70s, that would.
And Iris Paget used to take us all to Lichfield swimming baths when it was up
she?
the other end of Lichfield, at the swimming pool then
Yeah.
in Lichfield, not Friary. It was up by the where the hospital
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And she used to take us all up there and teach us to swim
So,
because a lot of us couldn't swim. So she took us all
Yes.
with armbands on, and we'd all got children.
Yeah.
Activities,
Yeah.
you've gone through drama and everything. What else
Were there
was
many
in the
clubs or
village?
other associations that you recall?
Not that we were involved in, I don't think.
No, the
there was
badminton,
obviously the
the
scouts,
drama,
but no, the
that
ones
was
we've
about it.
mentioned are the ones we were involved in. And you tend to
Yeah.
just remember those. Obviously there were the scouts and the
Mm.
cubs and all that sort of thing, but I don't really remember.
No,
Boys
Sorry.
Brigade
Don't remember.
don't remember that.
I'm sorry,
no.
I don't remember anything of
No.
that.
and Youth Club.
Don't remember. There was, but I mean, I don't
Yeah.
remember.
'Cause the local copper used to run the Youth Club. Ben.
We remember the old school because Miles
Yes, Miles went to the old school, and he was for a short
Very
time. He
short
went
period
to the
of time
new
at the new school
school.
before he
Didn't
went on to
like
John
it.
Taylor.
Liked the old school, but didn't like the new.
Mm.
Before he went to John Taylor. So somebody probably be able to tell you the exact time that was open. The new school. It would be something like 75, something like 75, 76 must have been. But somebody will be able to give you the proper information on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it would be 75, I think, because both of mine went to that school for a very short time. Then moved down to the new
The
school.
new one, yeah. yeah.
Mr. Hayden was
Miles said
headmaster.
That's
Miles
right.
said he went to the new
Yes.
school, but not for very long.
And Liz Bates was there, wasn't she, when she was born? Yeah.
Mrs. Rowe.
Don't
Mrs. Rowe,
remember.
Miss Naden.
Mrs. Bates, it was Liz Bates, who was Miles's teacher mainly.
Yeah.
Right, most important one for you two is how important is the canal to the village?
Well, the
It's-
canal
it's-
is a wonderful asset to the village, we think.
Well, I think that's what most other folks felt as well when I went to the
When we
neighbourhood
came-
plan meeting the other night. I mean, it was top of the list, wasn't it? It was considered to be very, very popular.
When we moved when we moved to the village, living in the caravan in 1961, the canal, there was hardly anything on it at all, was there? There was just the very occasional barge, you know, a big old boat selling coal, and we used to have the coal off the coalman on the boat. But apart from him, there were very few boats, perhaps an odd little, what we'd say was a plastic cruiser, a fiberglass cruiser, I suppose, but there weren't
Certainly
hardly
not the
any
holiday
boats
boats
at
that are
all.
on
It
there,
wasn't
no,
considered,
no.
I mean, when we bought the land, really, it wasn't, oh, you're going to live by the water, you know, it wasn't really that, was it?
No, I mean, when we bought the land, as
No.
we say, we didn't really want all of this land. We didn't think we could
and we
afford it.
certainly didn't think about the
But we-
canal at the time.
No, it wasn't the canal.
But
that sort
now
of-
it's,
But once we realised we'd got the canal as a boundary, we'd got to do something
wonderful.
a bit different to a two up, two down. You
but
know.
now it is so busy not in the winter, but in the summertime, it is really very, very busy with hire boats, with people who own the boats, you know, with lots and lots of different boats. Very, very occasional working boat. You'll occasionally get the coalman still and somebody who sells diesel, but not very often. But we think the canal is a real asset to the village.
One thing I've noticed with the canal is that it hasn't frozen as hard as it used to freeze. For some
Miles
reason or
used
other.
to...
Miles used to skate on there.
And I
play
mean,
on
I
there
wouldn't have let him
safely,
go on
very
unless I
safe.
was, you know, but it used to be so hard, didn't
Yeah.
it?
I mean, I can remember him vividly. He'd got this idea, mad idea, I thought, but he did it. He was into skateboarding in a big way, and this one day, he and a mate of his decided that they'd convert a skateboard and put a mast up and a sail on it and try sailing down the canal on the ice, which they did, because the wind was just coming straight across from west to east. And bingo, off he went, and he went all the way down to the lock on it.
Well, you wouldn't.
But you
It
couldn't
doesn't
now.
seem
I mean,
to
it's never
freeze
frozen
as
like
much as that
since.
now, no.
No.
But we do get a lot more flooding over the fields at the back, but the canal doesn't seem to freeze, so it
No.
must be warmer, mustn't
No.
it, this climate change?
When you think that the local headmaster used to go and check it, didn't he?
He
See if
did.
the kids could all
Yes,
go
see
on
if they
it
could go on
there.
it. Yes, he used to go out and do that.
Yeah,
didn't he?
I remember Nick
Yes.
Collins skating on it. Yes.
Yeah. So times have changed a bit.
And we used to skate I went with a chair with my ice skates. We used to skate over the fields, didn't we? At the back of the mill stream and the river, because it used to freeze there, but that was safe, you see, because it wasn't deep. It was just really where it had flooded,
Yeah.
and then it had frozen then on that.
Yeah.
any other involvements you had with it? Well, that's covered anyway, isn't it, with all the other things that
I
you've
think
done?
that's everything.
So
Julie.
that's everything.
There's just one other thing I'd like to mention,
Yeah.
and that's the churchyard
Oh yeah.
and the survey of it that we did. What happened was that in May 1972, the church, I don't know where it had come from, but the church were required to have a look at the possibility of moving all the gravestones and putting them around the side, relocating them, putting them around the side of the churchyard, in order that the churchyard itself could be maintained better.
A lot of people were against it
There's
because
lots
of all the
against.
wildlife, but the church authorities couldn't keep it tidy. I mean, there were brambles and that everywhere, and they'd really got to do something about it.
So it was decided that they would go ahead. So they asked, I think what they did was approach the Civic Society to see if they would help with it. And well, what happened was that, yes, I said I would do the survey work for them if other people would help me, which they did. Well, it was between May 1972 and July 1973. We fully surveyed where every single grave was and noted what each of them said, what
The
person was there,
name,
the name,
and
the
the dates and everything, not the inscriptions,
not the
like-
inscriptions,
not the
but,
little verses, but the real facts
and
of
there
the
were
grave.
950 graves actually in total.
And we've got the
And
plan.
it's all on the plan, precisely on the plan, and it's all scheduled as to who is.
And all
who
the
is where.
950 people are written down on this schedule.
Yeah.
And it was a big job that we did, but a lot of people helped
Lots
us,
of
didn't
help,
they?
and,
Brian sectioned it off into various areas, and certain people did their little area and then reported back to Brian, and he did the final thing, and eventually all the gravestones were moved to the sides, more or less. Not every single one, some were left so that it looks pleasant. I mean, it's beautiful now with all the snowdrops and everything, so really it was the right thing to do because they're able to keep it tidy, and it was getting terribly overgrown, wasn't it? So we feel we did a good job.
Sorry, can you name any of the people that helped you out with it?
I don't think we can,
can't-
because we've been looking today, haven't
There was
we?
only one that we found, and
One
I can't remember
name.
what that one was actually now.
We don't even know the person.
I didn't know, it didn't mean anything to me when I spotted the name in actual
But,
fact.
I mean,
No.
that doesn't matter, we can cut that
But,
out anyway. And when that goes on, somebody might come forward
Yes,
and
they
say,
might. I
what
have.
helped Brian do?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
no, we can't
Yeah,
remember.
I mean, there were a
We've
good half
looked.
a dozen or so people.
There'd be more than
that
half a
helped
dozen,
with it.
I think, Brian, because on that schedule with the 950, did you say? 950 names, there are all different handwritings and all that. I mean, I've done a big section, a lot of it's mine, isn't it? And all these other different people, I think there are a lot of people helped. We just can't remember who
No
it
photos?
was. No. No,
No
we haven't got
photos,
any
no.
photographs. We've
No.
looked and looked for photographs, but I
No.
think Peter Alice got some from somebody else. Peter Coates, I think it was, had got them, hadn't he? Peter Coates might have even been there helping us for all we know, because he's always been quite involved with the church. But this was before John Colston's time. We thought it was John Colston's time, but it wasn't. It was
It was Wells, wasn't it? Reverend
David
Wells.
Wells, the Reverend David Wells, yes. It was just, before he left, and John Colston came in 74, didn't he?